In what was arguably the most unusual inauguration in American history, President Donald Trump pledged that the golden age for the country had just begun. He promised to make America great again. However, what was missing in his nearly 30-minute-long inauguration address was the mention of Africa, which happened to be mentioned a total of 0 times.
I am an African.
Why do you think a lot of people, like a lot of African people, are attracted to Donald Trump?
I think because there's for a couple of reasons, and you could correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's an element that he gives off that seems to be uh not bought and owned, if that makes sense. So whereas you see someone like Kamala and you're like, she's part of the establishment and maybe she's like, you know, how can I say?
Mm-hmm.
You get what I mean, right? Like there's this idea that Trump is more like
Yeah.
no nonsense type of guy. Like, hey, no, don't do that, do this. Whereas like Kamala is like, well, you don't know what's behind her, what's backing her, and that sort of a thing. And I think there's also an element of he seems to be um well, at least now after he became president, he seems to have gone more towards traditional values. Like he seems to be more like pro traditional values, whereas I think in general, people. I think we did an episode about this recently, but like I think
Yeah.
generally in Africa there seems to be like a push against like foreign ideals, if that makes any sense, in many African countries. And by foreign ideals, I mean like Western ideals, like this I don't want to call it leftist ideology, but sort of, sort of, these leftists. There is a sort of a fear of like, oh, these people are going to come with them, and also I think there is some sort of evidence to that because,
Mm-hmm.
I think the Biden administration with the whole thing in Uganda and everything,
Mm.
pushing for that. So I think that could be me trying to
Yeah.
trying to be in the middle here, but it could be it could
Yeah, I mean
be.
but look, whether you agree or not, whether or not those are leftist values or um uh, foreign values, many Africans do think like that. They do believe that,
In traditional values, I should say. Like
Biden and the Democrats
I think like
tend to
yeah,
promote.
traditional values, religious values, at least, I think like
The thing
Christian.
is the
I
thing
think
is
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, the thing here is I could say the same for, if you use the case of Uganda and use
Hmm.
the case of uh, gay rights and, them sanctioning
Hmm.
Ugandan parliamentary members and speakers from going there, which Uganda has received with a lot of consternation. The government is not very happy about that, and I think they've had a back and forth with the U.S. ambassador to Uganda. This is not the first time. In 2014, there was the whole debacle over laws that I think they wanted to arrest people who, even like if there was a hotel and you suspected someone of being gay, that was the law. But I don't know if it passed or anything.
Okay.
But yeah, the US has had a lot of like periodical issues with Uganda over that.
Hmm.
And there have been Democrat presidents that have been the most tough on this.
Hmm.
And so therefore, Africans think that the US is promoting values that they don't,
Believe him.
at least the majority,
Yeah.
don't believe in. And this
Hmm.
majority is based off of Echiku, its Youth Survey Foundation,
Hmm.
where many of them don't accept or tolerate these values, uh, particularly with regards to gay rights. But
It could be. It
I
could.
would also argue that
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
at the same time, I would also argue that the conservative evangelical Americans also promote their own values in Africa. Many
Okay.
of those people and organizations that speak out against gay people in Africa are also funded by American evangelical non-governmental organizations.
Really? Do you
Many
have
of which
evidence
have
for
also
that?
supported Donald. Yes, I do.
Okay.
But I don't want to call names here.
Okay.
But
Okay. All
there
right. Fair
is a lot
enough.
of
Fair enough.
investigation evidence from multiple sources
Okay.
from that, Christian organizations do fund people in African countries
Okay.
to, you know, lobby and support all these. So the same can be said on both sides. But it's interesting when you actually look at the stats.
Uh-huh.
The Ichikowitz Youth Foundation 2024, they actually did one on what they think is in terms of their future with regards to which American president takes over. So we found that 2 in 5 young, so these are people from, I think, ages of 18 to like 25. So Gen Z Africans, 2 in 5 youth believe their country will be better off across a range of measures under a future Biden administration.
What did
And
you
around a quarter
would be
2 in 5 youth believe the country will be better off across a range of measures under a future Biden administration.
Okay.
Right? So more people believe Biden's administration would have been better for Africa, more young people.
That's interesting.
Around the quarter,
Yeah.
around the quarter say, this is a survey of 16 African countries.
Okay.
It's not every African country. Around the quarter say they expect no difference in relations with the US under either leader.
Yeah.
While similar proportions say they think their country would be better off under a Trump administration. So a quarter also think that their country would be better off under a Trump administration. Given Kamala Harris' experience as Biden's vice president, this would suggest that youth are likely to be more supportive of a potential Harris presidency than a second Trump term. This is also a reach. We don't know whether people think Biden and Harris will be the same person.
Yeah.
But many Americans didn't vote for Harris because they felt she represented Biden. So you could say that. So yeah. And then also in terms of perceptions, Africans' perceptions of the United States, 79% perceive the US to have a positive influence. Drivers of positive perceptions of the US, the number one reason is that the United States provides my country with important loans and economic support. Fun fact, fun fact, the United States actually wrote off debt, $1 billion of debt from Somalia.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. No, it's good that you had the information. I was just asking because I also never really heard that particular fact. So I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know that U.S. evangelicals were also some way in some sort of way like influencing African political discourse. But yeah, no, I think. But what do you think? What in your opinion, like, because I haven't done any. I chose to be extremely indifferent in this particular, political issue. But like, what do you think? Who do you think would have been better for Africa, in your personal opinion?
I think you're asking the wrong question. This is what I've been saying consistently. I think we should be asking how prepared is Africa, rather than who do we think better for Africa. I think American presidents are likely to change every 4 years. They will have different plans and different priorities. And American people also have different priorities. They will shift. Maybe today they'll care about what's going on in parts of Ethiopia. Maybe tomorrow they'll care about what's going on in Sudan. Maybe the next day they'll care about what's going on in Somalia. The next day it will be Congo. The next day it will be Mali. But Africa will always be there. The problems will most likely most likely exist if we expect other people to, So I think when we look at the policies, also there's another stat that I just want to drop in because we didn't mention, because we talked about 79% perceive America to be a positive influence. And the main reason was loans, important loans. Yeah. The reasons 21% perceive the US to have a negative influence. Once again, these are people between the ages of 18 to 24, so Gen Z Africans. Those who you have heard in protests in Kenya, those you have heard in protests in Nigeria. 21% perceive Africa to be US to have a negative influence, and the main reason is American companies are exporting our natural resources without fair compensation. So those are some of the reasons. So now if we look at the options that we had, that America had in this election. Sometimes we almost take possession of American politics as though we are from America. But the thing is, America is a superpower. It's the largest economy and by far the largest military in the world. So whether we like it or not, in one way or the other, you will meet America in one way or the other. So Donald Trump's presidency, Donald Trump never visited Africa.
Okay.
Melania Trump visited Africa. She visited Kenya. Yeah, Donald Trump never visited Africa. I think he visited Egypt. I'm not too sure. But yeah, his policy on Africa was definitely not a priority. The priority was mostly for Southeast Asia and Asian countries, and sort of confronting China with more resources. Both Biden and Trump want to confront China, but Biden has a bit more spread out priorities. Although Asia is still the main focus, Southeast Asia primarily, and also getting India into that mix, into confronting the United States as well in Asia. Trump never visited Africa. He's famous for the statement that was a reported statement that he called Africa a shithole, and some African countries responded with wonderful tourism adverts. And he also mistook Zambia. I don't know if he took Zambia and Namibia or just called them Nambia, like mixed both of them. So yeah,
It could be misspeaking.
Yeah, he doesn't have much with regards to Africa, and one of the JD Vance, for example, when you look at the nomination for some of the so ambassadors, when they get appointed, have to be nominated. The Senate has to basically put them through a series of interviews to see whether they're fit to be deployed to be ambassadors representing the United States. So one was being sent to Ghana, the US ambassador to Ghana, and she was she was questioned by JD Vance on values. He was quite uncomfortable with the fact that American ambassadors are promoting values, human rights and democracy, rather than promoting sort of hardcore economic military interests. And he felt that is why America is not looking like the better alternative to China. And when you look at Africa, US policy in Africa, it's increasingly becoming informed by competing with China, rivaling China.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, on the other hand, was supposed to make a visit to Africa. It was supposed to have been the first visit in about 16 years since Barack Obama visited Africa. I think that last visit was to Kenya and Ethiopia, maybe, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Biden didn't. Trump never visited. So Biden wanted to visit Angola, but the trip was postponed due to Hurricane Milton, which was happening in the southern part of the United States, southeast. That was primarily around the Angola, Congo, and Zambia Lobito corridor, the multi-billion project.
Yeah.
And this feeds into the same issue of competing with China. So America's had multiple programs with regards to Africa, affecting Africa. There was the Blue Dot program. The Blue Dot program basically is like, it's basically China has this thing called Belt and Road Initiative. So Belt and Road Initiative includes numerous infrastructure projects. It was started in 2013. Includes so many infrastructure projects that are being built across the developing world, built by China, and then in return, China gets to send its own materials to build. So it sends its own materials to build, construction companies to build, and controversially also its people to build. So it's also feeding the Chinese economy, and then ultimately giving Africa the capacity to trade more and trade better with China. So it's infrastructure to enhance trade with China. So it's a second type of trade network. So the United States recognized this, and in the last 20 years, China has grown so rapidly and outpaced the United States as Africa's main trade partner, and even now in arms as well. China and Russia remain the biggest arms origin for Angola. And Angola has been mentioned by Biden last year in December that Angola is the most important country for US priorities. Why? Because the Lobito Corridor reaches copper, the Central African copper belt, which is one of the main ingredients for electronics and semiconductors, sorry, for artificial intelligence. And China is also competing in the artificial intelligence and technology industry. So if you want in Africa, you have to be able to get the resources.